Colleagues, good evening. Welcome to our today's meeting. It is Tuesday, the 11th of March. Due to technical reasons, we had to push back the beginning of the meeting. Thank you for your patience and waiting. So let's check the connectivity. Can you see? Can you hear me? Everything is fine. Tens all over the place. Someone said excellent, perfect, good. Then we can start our today's active discussion, which is focused or is around the decision made by GTI to single out UST-based high-speed transportation into a separate project. We have already dedicated 2 meetings to that topic, the one that we had last Thursday and last Saturday, which is 2 days ago, and today. Today, we are going to discuss the bullet points from the collective letter that was written by a number of investors into the string transportation technology to the name of the author and the creator of the UST technology, Anatoly Yunitsky. So we are going to look into very curious bullet points. Some of them I've already covered during our last 2 meetings, but there are some fundamental points that need to be reiterated and be focused on. So, dear colleagues, please tell me whether we have at this meeting partners who participated in signing this collective letter. If we have such partners, could you please write in the chat, yes, I was part of it, or just yes, I signed it, something. If you didn't participate in making up this letter, don't write anything. Just only the signatories. I see 3 people only. 4. 5. Colleagues, you don't have to be shy, because this meeting is all about this topic. I see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who said yes, they did sign the letter. I think by the time the letter was signed, there were 300 investors who signed the letter in order or before sending it to Dr. Yunitsky. Okay, then. Let's start the meeting. I will read some of the points from that letter, and then we will point by point break down the questions raised in that letter, and then we will also look into some of the comments on the string transportation technology and high-speed technology. And then I'm going to have a proposal to those colleagues who signed and sent the letter. I think it's going to be a fair proposal, and probably in the future it can serve as a solution to what is proposed in the letter, and it will be kind of a way to address the disagreements expressed in the letter regarding the high-speed transportation. So it is important you stay until the end of the meeting. I don't think it's going to be a short meeting. I think it will be around 1 hour and a half, or probably 2 hours, because there are things that require our attention, our time, and in my opinion, we'll have to learn the ABCs of what we are investing into, where we have invested, and what the string transportation technology is, and the related intellectual property is. So our meeting will be again dedicated to this overarching topic. And then on Thursday, we're going to have a recap meeting discussion. And then finally, we can dot all the I's and cross all the T's. Then I think we can start. Then traditionally, I will ask you not to interrupt me. Don't write anything in the chat. Oh, you know what? Let's disable the chat so that people are not tempted to write there anything, in order not to repeat the situation we had last time when we agreed on not writing any messages, and then people still started writing messages. So now the chat has been disabled, and then I we will have time to discuss your comments too. Okay, then. So, friends, let's start from the collective letter addressed to Dr. Unitsky. As I said, we're going to have at least around 2 hour meeting. Some of the things I will be reading from the letter. I will be commenting on things that I will read. So I ask you to be patient because we need to substantially understand everything, because for some people certain things are not clear, yet they can seem clear to others. Some of you might be watching this meeting as a recording. Some of you take with a grain of salt some skepticism things that I will be saying or commenting on. Some of you might think that I'm beating around the bush. If you are of that opinion, then I suggest you walk by without stopping. And you can exit the meeting. So I'm addressing myself to those who are watching it right now, because a lot of people are watching the recordings of our meetings, around 2,000 people and more, within a week after the video is published. So again, if you think that it is all empty talk and you don't want to waste your time on or spend your time on learning some fundamental things, then friends, it is better you don't spend your time. And then if you watch the recording and you think it's all empty talk, then I suggest you don't watch it until the end. Just pass by and avoid sending negative comments my way or the company's way. Let's start. We can do this by sharing the screen so that you can see the text of the letter. I am going to share my screen. Okay. Ruslan, could you please enable the chat so that people could confirm that they can see my screen? Please tell me if you can see the letter that I'm showing right now. Yes, you say you can. Okay. Someone says it's too small. Well, let me try and increase the font size or zoom in. I hope this way you can see better. So I'm reading it as it is shown here, starting from left. Okay? I hope you can see it. Let me zoom in even more because I think that's what you're asking for, right? To make it even bigger. I hope this is better. Okay, thanks. Thank you for your reply. Riga says hello to everyone. Riga, which is the capital of Latvia. Thank you. Now we can disable the chat and resume our work. Collective letter. Dear Anatoly Eduardovich, we concerned citizens have been financing the Unitsky group of companies for various periods. String Technologies Inc., formerly known as the Skyway Group of Companies, through various crowdfunding platforms. Funds is writing to you with a collective letter. For a long, long time, we've been popularizing and promoting the string transportation systems to the best of our ability. We truly believe that the technology we have developed is capable of radically transforming the transport sector, pushing aside existing monopolists and providing prompt, safe, comfortable, and accessible communication between people, regardless of the distances between them. Over these many years, we have spent with you, from pictures and sketches to various types of track structures and samples of string transport implemented in the material. We have repeatedly been convinced that you are true to your word, that you're extremely far-sighted, responsible, and always keep your promises. Many of us came to the public financing of the then Skyway project on your belief that we're creating the largest business in the history of civilization. We, as well as tens of thousands of other investors, have heard from you many times, both in news releases, individual interviews, and personally at previously held EcoFests, that we as co-owners will receive profit from the entire UST technology, which includes not only passenger and cargo solutions, but also high-speed UST. You said that the vector plan of 15 stages of financing of UST technology may change, but the initial terms of the agreements with us concerning what we will own as investors will remain unchanged. You emphasized that you personally are. Okay, it's there where it has jumped. Okay. You emphasized that you personally are the guarantor of their preservation. Our survey of participants who supported the embodiment of your dream in the Telegram groups we are part of showed that it was the high-speed transportation that most attracted and interested future investors when deciding to start financing string transportation systems. The high-speed direction of UST technology truly claims to form a new branch of the global economy in the context of increasing demand for high-quality, high-speed mobility. In this regard, we took an extremely negative view of the article. Development of the high-speed direction of UST will reach a new level, as well as the memorandum on high-speed technology UST on the website. And below, we have claims and questions. In a kind of a accusatory light. So basically, what the authors are unhappy with. Assessments by some no-name experts of the amount of work completed on high-speed UST, a total of about 1% of the work, has been completed, and the funds received by UST Inc. for this purpose over 10 years. Next bullet point. Actual exclusion of the intellectual property rights in the high-speed segment of UST from ownership of the holding company GTI and their transfer to a separately created company in the United States, as well as in connection with this, a reduction of 100%, 70% of ordinary and 30% of preferred shares ownership of GTI Inc. High Speed Project UST up to 5% preferred shares. Absence of payments from royalties, licenses, and other payments related to the implementation of pre-stressed track structures technology as part of the high-speed route UST owned by the holding company GTI. We have many questions about these unfounded allegations and the subsequent management decisions made on their basis. So, dear colleagues, before we start covering the bullet points, the issues raised here, I would like to draw your attention to the first bullet point in here. During our last meeting, I was talking about a topic, and moreover, I added commentary on this topic in the Telegram channel. There is no such thing as assessments done by some no-name experts. Here, it's easy to understand. The string transportation technology as a sector-forming project is owned and is managed and is implemented into practice solely by Dr. Initsky and the engineering school run by him. As for the evaluation of the money spent, it's quite simple. There is a 10-year history of the operations of the engineering company String Technologies Inc. in Belarus. Every year, this company working in Belarus goes through very rigid independent audit. And those who know, they know that Belarus is a very specific post-Soviet country where the letter of law is followed by letter. And as far as any area of business is concerned, you have to be literally crazy to break any law because you might face very dire consequences. So what I'm driving at here, if the company goes through an audit, that audit is run by an independent certified entity which is licensed to do such audits. So in the expenses part of the balance sheet in the company, String Technologies, there is an article, there is an item, money spent for a certain business or area of operations. In this case, we're talking about expenditures related to high-speed transportation. For your information, dear colleagues, it is important to understand that the engineering company covers almost 60 design bureaus, and only one design bureau is dedicated to the high-speed transportation. It is just one design bureau working on the development of high-speed transportation under the management of Dr. Initsky. And if we take the financial statements and financial reports and the expenditures, you can track every penny spent on that project, on that area. Back in 2016, the first financial audit was published on our platform. And then later on, the company published all of their financial audits on their own websites when this restructuring happened. And the group of companies, CUST, was set up as separate legal entities. And the financial reporting was published on the website of String Transportation Inc. So if you go to your back office in RSW Systems, you will find one of the first financial reports, audit results. And back then, you can track the entire financial activity of the company with those reports. And I have a very interesting point of note to the colleagues who signed this collective letter addressed to Dr. Initsky. I will have a proposal in order to make it fair and square, but I'm going to do it at the end. Therefore, here, saying that the assessments were done by some no-name experts, well, by saying it, that's how you call Dr. Initsky and his specialist. Actual exclusion of the intellectual property, etc., etc. Last meeting, I said that there was no share dilution. You, as investors who received a certain number of pre-IPO shares in the GTI company, you have your name entered into the registry of shareholders, you will own the same number of shares pre-IPO shares. Nothing was taken from you, and the number of pre-IPO shares that you received is the same, and the same number is included in the registry. The 5% that is given to the holding company, GTI, in the 5% stake in the newly established American company, is the 5% stake in that new company. It doesn't mean that 95% was taken from you. We will go back to that. We will discuss what should be added in it and how, to what extent by now we have funded the high-speed transportation. But it is very important to understand here, friends, that 1% that we have right now, we are talking about the money spent out of the available amount raised through investment crowdfunding. But for that 1% of money raised, we receive 5% stake in the American company, which will build an entire transportation hub, which will showcase transportation based on string technology. We already receive 5% stake in a 750 million project. So let's deal with numbers. $750 million is 100%. We, as co-owners of GTI, receive a 5% stake in that project. 5% out of that amount is $37 million if you calculate it in monetary terms. So that 1% that was spent on high-speed transportation separately, again, this is not $37 million. It's not even $10 million, that 1%. In other words, we already received as an advance a stake which is several times bigger than was actually spent over that period. This is a very important thing to understand. So this first bullet point is a subjective opinion of a pool of quote-unquote experts among our investors. It's their personal subjective opinion that has nothing to do with facts. Let's call it like a coach experts or SOFA experts. As actual exclusion of the intellectual property statement, it has no de jure or de facto grounds whatsoever. Next, absence of payments from royalties, licenses, and other payments related to the implementation of pre-stressed track structure technology as part of the high-speed UST. I guess here the authors of the letter were guided, if I'm not mistaken, by the memorandum where the company declared the payment of future dividends. And of course, the company also implied that GTI funded in part the group of companies UST, and the group of companies UST created two products, which is passenger urban and cargo transportation, and high-speed transportation is yet nowhere to be seen. So to add it into the future revenues, or better even profits, in the next 5 to 7 years is privy of any sense. It's like absolutely pointless, because you cannot expect profits from something that hasn't been yet created, tested, or certified, let alone the absence of commercial demand for it. I hope this is clear as well. Now let's go back to the letter. We have many questions about these unfounded allegations and so on. Evaluation of your intellectual property in string transportation technology, $400 billion, which is owned by GTI, was carried out on the basis of an independent assessment of the company LLC Hold Invest audit. What is the share of the high-speed segment of UST in the total volume of intellectual property of the company GTI, and whether it will be excluded with a proportional reduction in the total number of pre-IPO shares. Many investors were surprised to learn that from the time of the demonstration of the first high-speed Unibus Skyway to a wide audience at the specialized transport exhibition InnoTrans, no significant progress in the development of high-speed UST by UST Inc. group of companies was made, since the work of the entire team of engineers in this area was estimated at only 1%. So why they were so surprised to learn that since 2017-2018, it was quite apparent already that the group of companies UST didn't have an appropriate piece of land where they could fully showcase the sector-forming technology of high-speed transportation. Back then, they realized that they didn't have the land, but they wouldn't have in the near future such piece of land. Because Dr. Initsky is, of course, an engineer, an inventor, a genius in their relative field, but he's also a businessman. And back then, in 2017, he made a clear decision based on the interest of business. He realized that he couldn't, for objective reasons, continue bringing the high-speed transportation to the market for two reasons. First, we didn't have land for that. And second of all, there was no fully funded money for that. And by then, the company already was 4 years old. And Dr. Initsky realized if he tried to handle 3 types of transportation at the same time, by 2025-24, they wouldn't have anything at all because the focus would be spread too thin. Of course, there might have been some advancements in the high-speed transportation, some components developed, but the company wouldn't have other certified, tested, ready to use and to sell products that the company already received orders for. The first contracts were made. So Dr. Initsky made a wise business decision to focus his attention and to spend money on things that take less time to create in order to bring that project into the market. So the company was following the course of those 15-stage program as a vector of the optimistic forecast. So basically, the company created one by one the easy to implement products, the products that are easy to create, bring to the market, capitalize, monetize, create demand for, and eventually something that would influence our ability to receive dividends and remuneration. So I wasn't surprised to learn, although yes, I was also in 2018 in Berlin visiting the InnoTrans all day, all throughout its whole duration, and then I regularly flew to the Emirates, and I realized it was a very wise decision. So for me as an investor, and I told you that this collective letter was written by investors, and I will comment as investors, as a person who was involved in the crowd investing for 11 years now. So for me as an investor, I didn't have such questions, but for some reason, our colleagues here raised those questions and were surprised. Next, we as investors regularly come across the statement that the funds received from us through crowdfunding platforms acting as intermediaries are extremely insufficient, that this does not allow for the full provision of the necessary 15-stage funding for the commercialization of the UST technology and leads to a constant serious shortage of funds for the development of UST. At the same time, during the annual audit of the financial statements conducted as of December 31st, 2022, the group of companies has been self-sufficient for more than 2 years since its foundation, significantly increasing the size of its existing assets. We're experiencing a kind of a dissonance in what is happening. On the one hand, UST already has enough money not only from attracted investments, but also from its production activities. And on the other hand, we're told that only about 1% of the necessary work on high-speed UST has been completed. It seems that all these years, the development of high-speed UST solution has been deliberately slowed down in order then to move this segment into a separate business, significantly reducing the share of ownership in it by the first minority shareholders. We're hearing rumors about the veracity of this assumption, since some leaders of large investment structures confirm that they knew 3 years ago that in the future high-speed string transportation will be removed from the general UST technology. It's like a thriller, guys, a detective story. It seems like they presume that UST was strategically working on postponing things that they could re-implement, but they decided not to, so that in 2025 they would be able to single it out into a separate segment and then exclude investors from it. So my question to you: if a company reaches its break-even point, self-sufficiency point, and at the same time raises money through crowd investing, if we if for the creation of high-speed transportation technology and for the showcasing of this hub as a sector forming complex with everything that it means, and I will tell you what I mean by sector forming transportation. So my question to you: even taking those two facts, that the company reached its break-even point, it means that the company can cover their operational costs with their business activities. And second fact is that crowd investing money simply add to the funding of the R&D operations aimed to improve the ready products already existing. And I mentioned it during my previous meetings on a number of them. So what I'm saying here, asking here, so do you think the money that is necessary for high-speed transportation, the money raised, is enough for high-speed transportation? Even if starting from 2020, Dr. Unitsky in parallel spent money on high speed as well, then believe me, by 2023, 2024, the company wouldn't have all those numerous types of rolling stock for urban and cargo transportation. But why did they do it? Look, because right now they have more than 15 types of different types of rolling stock for urban and cargo transportation, which shows that it's a fully blown sector, a ready-to-use product with very different products meeting different needs, with different supports and different rail structures. And all of it was oriented towards clients so that customers from mountainous areas could immediately place an order for a certified transportation system, like lightweight track structure with a small rolling stock with lightweight supports that would make it easy to pass through mountains. And also for customers that would need like 30 kilometers of urban transportation, they would see that the supplier already has certified solutions for them. For example, rolling stock that can carry from 16 to 48 passengers per car, so that those customers could see and that it works. And once they place an order, the product would be delivered. So in business-wise terms, everything is very logical. And some of our colleagues are writing here that many came for the idea of high-speed transportation. Friends, we don't have to deceive ourselves. Urban passenger transportation that moves at 150 kilometers per hour, right now it moves at 75, 100 kilometers per hour above ground. This is the current implementable speed. It's also high speed transportation, but it's urban high speed. The same stands for cargo transportation. The string transportation technology far outplays the current railway transportation in terms of speed. So don't say that we came for the idea of high-speed transportation. We came for the idea of innovating clean environmental transportation. We came for something that was a revolution in a sector that hasn't changed in the last 200 years, and Dr. Unitsky showed that it can. So here we can go back to, well, you know what, I'll come back to it later. Let's not jump the gun here. Next, third point. So here it's quite pretty self-explanatory. What they wrote here, that we are of the opinion, yes, you are of the opinion. It's your personal opinion. You have the right to have whatever opinion you want, which is limited only by your imagination. You can make up an entire detective story about it and then shoot a movie about it. But I'm giving you the timeline of the development of the company, the entire company and the entire timeline. And it's no news to us. Unitsky on numerous occasions explained his every step, the company's every decision, and every course the company took. And all those decisions were always accompanied by substantiation and arguments. Next. The letter continues. Dr. Unitsky, what is the reason for the fact that you, as the author and the general designer of string transportation systems, persistently and repeatedly avoid investors' questions related to the amount of funds received by UST and spent on its needs? What could be simpler than installing a counter of attracted funds on the website, similar to what other crowdfunding projects do, and report quarterly on their spending? This step would significantly increase transparency and trust in string transportation systems, would stimulate investors to close certain needs of UST, and would become a significant help in our fight against ill-wishers of the technology. So let's not substitute facts here, okay? Dr. Unitsky does not personally raise any funds, not through crowd investing or any other means. Dr. Unitsky took his intellectual property of Unisky and transferred it to the holding company GTI. The investments and funds are raised by GTI, and the GTI company created a group of companies, UST. And the main company of that group of companies is the engineering company. And GTI attracts money through crowd investing and spends it to implement string transportation technology. Dr. Unitsky is the general designer of his own technology. And what is received from GTI is the money that spent on the implementation of his technology. And that money is added to the authorized capital of the engineering company and also used to cover the expenditures related to the implementation of the technology. And also, part of the money was invested by Dr. Unitsky himself into the development of both UST group of companies and separate companies within part of the Unitsky's group of companies. There will be a paragraph dedicated to it. So we need to understand here that when you write that Dr. Initsky is avoiding those questions, he doesn't. He mentioned on numerous occasions that we receive only the money that was raised and transferred to us by the crowdfunding platforms. How much money is it can be easily calculated using the financial audits of the engineering company, because during the meeting that was dedicated to the legal organization structure of the UST group of companies, I showed and I made also diagrams where the money comes from, how the revenues are generated, etc. As for the counters, the meters of funds raised, then UST company cannot install those meters or counters for one simple reason, because UST Inc. does not directly raise any investments. The engineering group of companies has no direct relation to fundraising. The engineering company and all the related structures, the SV plant and other legal entities, they implement the technology, whereas the funds are raised by GTI. So if you make such a request, then it would be more reasonable to do that on the GTI website and not in the engineering website that has no relation to that first website. There is intellectual property transferred to the GTI. GTI issued a certain number of pre-IPO shares. Those shares, through the convertible loan agreements, are given to the shareholders in exchange for money. That money goes to GTI, from GTI to engineering company, and engineering company uses that money to implement the technology under the leadership of Dr. Initsky, who has no direct relationship or even indirect relationship to that process. So it has been written in the investment memorandum many years ago, the entire structure. It was also included in the memorandum of 2025 on the structure, legal structure. Everything was clearly stated there. So UST cannot put up this counter showing how much money was raised. Well, it could be in part done on the crowd investing platforms, but what would be the point? Or better, there might be some confidentiality breaches. Why would we show to the competitors how much money was raised and how much money was spent on certain works? Because some people might be surprised and are surprised how Dr. Unitsky managed to use a certain amount to deliver things that are 10 times more expensive. And he created things that are contributing to the formation of entire sectors. Next, Dr. Initsky, why would you create an entire hub, high-speed hub, to demonstrate the viability of the high-speed direction aspect of UST, which is a route from point A to point B with a distance of 25-30 kilometers and achieving a speed of up to 500 kilometers per hour on it with an existing Uniflash? Why do we need this expensive showroom? Why these complications with elements of a linear city and other infrastructure? What and to whom we are proving? Demonstration of high-speed indicators by Uniflash, the same 350, 400 kilometers per hour, will already cause a sensation and wide public resonance, genuine interest in our technology, and consequently orders and sales. So let's look into this point. So what has been created both on the grounds of Ecotechnopark in Belarus and the R&D center in the United Arab Emirates? It's not a fully fledged showcasing or showroom of a sector forming technology. A sector forming technology is not just kilometers or 400-meter tracks. It's just elements of an entire sector, because the first eco-techno park and the one that is in Sharjah was conceived that either in one of them there will be a high-speed transportation eventually, because a sector is not represented by just one component, one segment in the train transportation. In this case, we're talking about, for example, Uniflash, high speed. Uniflash is not enough to showcase the entire sector, and to show that it goes at 300 or 400 kilometers per hour is not showcasing an entire sector. In order to show a sector forming technology, you need to show how it works as a complex, which is a depot, the station. It is the rails management system. You need to show how it interacts with urban and cargo transportation, how it all ties into the high-speed transportation system, and how it works as a single mechanism. And at the same time, one supplements the other, adds up to the other. If we're talking about the elements of linear cities, if we're talking about nature conservation, when you can show biohumus and other R&D by Dr. Initsky aimed at nature preservation, then this would be a complete showcasing of the sector forming technology. So it's not just limited to showrooms or hubs or pieces of land. In the United States, we're going to have a full-fledged hub, which will not only showcase the high-speed transportation, but will truly show that it's a new sector. And only using this approach and this kind of demonstration can speed up the inflow of orders for this new type of transportation in the United States and North America in general. Currently, Dr. Initsky's team is going to the US territory with that project, and they need to be able to showcase what they have or what they have developed. And only after that, they will be able to start receiving infrastructural project orders. But also, they will cover, in addition to high-speed transportation, which will also include cargo and urban passenger transportation, but we are already 100% co-owners in cargo and passenger transportation. So the creation and expansion of the infrastructure and all extra kilometers of tracks built for high-speed transportation will also be used for passenger and cargo transportation, where we are 100% co-owners, already existing shareholders of a existing technology. I hope you understand. Next, Anatoly, we as investors implementing UST technology are not investors in the development and demonstration of linear cities. Let me start over. Dr. Initsky, we as investors implementing the UST technology are not investors in the development and demonstration of linear cities, eco-houses, landscapes using Uterra, biohumus, etc. What is important to us is the fastest possible development and commercialization of the technology of which we are co-owners, and not other areas. We already had experience with when at EcoFest 2018 from the big stage, they listed to us what the Skyway project had achieved, and therefore we as its investors. But then it turned out that we confused the achievements of Dr. Initsky's group of companies with the achievements of UST Inc., and in fact have nothing to do with much of what was announced. This was a big disappointment. Why was it a big disappointment? When Unitsky originally started his activities on creating the string transportation technology, he said that he had experience and practical knowledge and over 100 patented technologies. And also back then, well, let's put it this way. What we invested in through the convertible loan agreement is the technology based on string transportation. In other words, we have an agreement with GTI company which is based on string transportation technology, and that's what we're investing in. And the fact that Dr. Unitsky, in parallel, through his Unitsky's group of companies, is implementing other technologies for which he has patents and know-hows. So why it should be surprising or disappointing to us? Dr. Unitsky is developing as an engineer and author of the string transportation technology with our help, and in parallel, through other investors and other partners, he is developing other R&D projects which he invented. And it is a good thing he does, because he is able to show how his technologies serve to preserve the planet. But if some people thought that we will also be related to the rocket-free space exploration, you can see the mock-up models behind me. It's also a misconception. Probably you thought that you would co-own those technologies as well, but this is a question to you. Unitsky never said that those things would be also co-owned. Other developments also will be co-owned by people. Then why not say that the award that Dr. Unitsky received in 1989 in the amount of almost $3 million, he received grants from the United Nations. So in late 80s, he already became a millionaire in the Soviet times. And should we also claim that money and those developments? And some people say that Dr. Unitsky didn't start with a penny in his pocket, and he is implementing his wishes, making his dreams come true using our money. He was already an established businessman and well-off inventor, thanks to his inventions and know-hows, thanks to all those rewards and grants that he received in early 1990s. Yes, on numerous occasions, his work was taken away from him, but he never stopped. He moved on. So just think how much money it is right now, $3 million back in 1989, adjusted for inflation and exchange rate. It's around 30 million in the current money. So if you had this misconception, it's not Dr. Unitsky's fault, because for me, everything was quite logical and obvious here, and it was never associated in my head. Next, Dr. Unitsky, as co-owners of the UST technology, we really want to hope and believe that you, as the author and the general designer of string transportation systems, will be imbued with the concerns and anxieties that are seething in our investor environment. Delve into our expectations and hope. We believe that we're being treated extremely unfairly, violating previously reached agreements, increasing the share of payments from GTI profits from 20 to 30 is not an equivalent replacement for intellectual property rights in the high-speed segment of UST, which is the most promising of all available. The decisions taken by the may have an extremely negative impact not only on future financial receipts for the development, but also on the reputation of all holding companies. So now I have a question to you. Why do you think something was taken away from us? Our pre-IPO shares are not diluted or are not taken from us the way some of you might seemingly see. For example, you have 100,000 shares. In the future, when the high-speed transportation is fully implemented, we're going to have a 5% stake in the profits generated by this segment. Those 5% profits will be allocated across all GTI shareholders proportionate to the number of shares they have. If the company makes 5 billion, then 5% is $250 million. And those $250 million will be allocated across all GTI shareholders whose names are entered into the shareholders registry. And now let's take a look what our investors are asking, and we can discuss it. We ask you to return the original terms of ownership of the UST technology to investors and do not change the guarantees previously given to us despite the force majeure that has occurred and may occur in the future. Cancel the decision to withdraw intellectual property rights in the high-speed segment of UST from the holding company GTI into a separate company created in the United States. Offer large potential US investors to invest directly in the root technology UST. If necessary, organize for them to buy out the required volume of shares from early investors, having developed the appropriate legal mechanism for this. Let's go back to the conditions of ownership of UST first. Let's go back to 2014 when the plan for the development of the string transportation technology was developed and when the holding group of companies GTI was set up. So what happened is Dr. Unitsky took part of their intellectual property, had it evaluated, and then transferred it to the name of the holding company. And the GTI company assumed the obligation to use crowd investing platforms to raise funds for the creation of the string transportation technology, which covers three areas: urban transportation, cargo transportation, and high-speed transportation. And if we go back to the original terms and conditions, in those original terms and conditions, there were two main conditions. If we boil it down to simple terms, business terms, first condition was raising funds. Second condition, the string transportation technology is implemented using those funds in three different segments. In order to create all three, implement all three segments of the string transportation systems technology, not enough money was raised. The money was raised only to implement two segments, which is urban passenger and cargo transportation. Therefore, who failed to deliver on their obligations? Was it the GTI company that was supposed to create a full-fledged string or comprehensive string transportation technology, and Dr. Unitsky, who diligently delivered what he signed to and even over-delivered because he delivered more than was actually given, because he delivered both urban passenger and cargo transportation. So I don't see any point in the request made by our colleagues here. And then to offer large potential US investors to invest directly in the root technology UST and organize for them the buyout, etc., etc. Look, friends, currently, creating a company in the United States and its development will allow to attract big-time institutional investors, venture investors, and private investors with a completely different approach and philosophy to investing. In the United States, it's kind of a science or better culture of its own, both in terms of financial literacy and the culture of creating your own capital. In the United States, every family has its own investment portfolio, including like shares, etc., with the help of financial advisors, or they do it on their own through brokers, and so on and so forth. So what I'm saying here is that the US market and the US audience will be investing with great pleasure into their own country, in their own territory, and they will be doing it with great confidence because there the laws allow the companies that was established there to issue shares and to sell those shares. This is A. B, it is important to understand that from using the investments of those investors, considering that the hub will cost around $750 million, and I did explain to you that at least 1/3 of that money, according to my estimations, around 150 million, probably more, will go to the UST group of company because they will be the one performing the orders for the customer in the United States, for the company in the United States. And we are co-owners of UST. So it will directly increase our remuneration because we are co-owners of UST. And it will directly affect the income generation by UST. And we can share in that revenues because the company declared that they're reaching the break-even point and exceeding it. And the establishment of a US company will only speed up the payout day. And for some people, they simply don't want to understand that. Lost, where was I? Just give me a second. Here it is. The second point, we've covered it. And now the third point. So where is it? Just give me a second, please. Just give me a second, please. The point number 3 is here. In order to avoid misunderstanding, I think I skipped one point somewhere. In order to avoid misunderstanding and misinterpretations, it is necessary to sign a document with each of the investors which will fully and properly reflect what we as investors own in the UST group of companies in string transportation systems. There is a clear-cut memorandum which tells us what we own as investors in the UST group of companies. There's a whole list of legal entities that are part of the UST group of companies. And it's not a corporation, it's not a holding, it's an interrelated legal entities that we are related to. It is stated in the memorandum on the website of GTI Holdings. It's the structure of the company section. I had a separate meeting about it with all the answers given. So now, dear colleagues, I suggest I am going to have a very interesting clarification in order to deal with all the questions, but I would like to make a short break for just 10 minutes because we've been talking for an hour, 15 minutes. Probably we'll need the same time to cover the remaining points because there are things I wanted to share with you and talk about with you. Let's enable the chat, Ruslan, if you can. if you don't mind, let's make a 10-minute break. And then right now we have looked into the letter. I missed one point. Someone is asking, can we ask questions now? Let's do it later, okay? Not right now. Anatoly says, let's have a break. Yes, let's make a break. Right now it's 7:32 p.m. local time. Let's meet back here at a quarter to the hour. In other words, in 10, 12 minutes. Ruslan, could you please like stop the recording here and then you can edit the second part, okay? So, dear colleagues, please ask your questions later. The reason I'm taking a break here is that I wanted to give you a very important example and to make you understand what a sector forming technology is, because the authors of the letter seem not to understand it, and then we will have questions asked, okay? So Ruslan, could you please stop the recording, and colleagues, let's see you back here in 12 minutes, okay? I'm done with my part. Okay, I turned the recording back on. We can continue our meeting. So where were we? We've looked into the letter, not all of it. I skipped one bit, but I'm going to go back to it right now because I didn't open the document. I wasn't viewing the document conveniently, comfortably. It kind of split in two, so I could see two pages at the same time, and because of that, I skipped one important point. So friends, I hope you can see my screen. So can you see my screen? Just give me some feedback in the chat, please. Okay, good, good. So I'm going to, yes, thank you. Thank you for your feedback. When a couple of people said that they can see, it means that probably everyone can see if they set up their computers correctly. Someone says, I see one of the points. If there is no point between high speed and other types of transportation, why we should split them. Yeah, that's what I wanted to discuss, because if, in your opinion, you invested into the entire technology and have a claim to all aspects of it, then this is not the case. And I will give an example and argumentation. So what did I miss? It's in here. A separate sore point in the financing of string transportation system is the activity of crowd investing platforms. I did mention it during my last meeting, but since this is a dedicated meeting, we will dwell on it in detail as well. These platforms attracting funding for the implementation of the UST technology, according to our estimates and those of other investors, have grown significantly, both in terms of the number of employees up to individual businesses and in terms of financial appetites, with an indecent depth of referral deductions from the funds raised. I will make a pause here. I will resume later. Regardless of what kind of how many levels is in the structure or depth of a referral business, nothing will change in terms of funds raised. The marketing is different. If in RW systems we had a 5-level referral system and 30% is allocated for those 5 levels, then they stay 30% regardless of the number of levels, because they could be reallocated in a different way. For example, instead of giving money for personal sales, you could the money could be allocated across all levels. but the amount would be the same. At the same time, you are correct in saying that, and you mention it in your letter, that the crowd investing money for the GTI and for the obligations of Dr. Yanitsky for creating the technology using less money than actually was donated, investors receive more shares, pre-IPO shares, than actually they received. They paid for. In other words, they invest 1,000. Dr. Nitsky receives 500, for example, yet they receive $1,000 worth of shares. And it was the only model, and it mentioned it, that allowed Dr. Nitsky to implement two types of transportation, cargo and passenger. It was the only incentivizing enough financial model that allowed to successfully fund the existing achievements. It's very important to understand. So it doesn't matter how many levels is in the referral system. If crowd investing eats up to 50%, Swig at one point worked 50-50. Then they moved to 60 for the technology and 40% for the referral program. They worked according to that proportion for a year to raise more funds. In Skyworld community, they stick to the same principle, 50-50 more or less. Probably 55 V45. I don't know exactly, but the point is that let's take 50% on average is taken by the crowd investing. It is expensive, yes. And it is one of the key reasons why Dr. Initsky made a wise decision to single out high-speed UST and fund it using a different model. Because if he would follow the same financial model, investment crowdfunding for the high-speed transportation, the model that we've used for 11 years now, then the cost of the hub and the showcasing of the high-speed transportation would cost double the amount. Instead of 750 million, it would be 1.5 billion. And now see how many human years it would take. Around 20 years, I think it would take to raise that much money. And I don't think we are ready to wait for that long for the project to be fully implemented and to bear such costs. So Dr. Nitsky made a very wise strategic decision to bring it to the United States and implement the project using a different principle. Yes, there will be marketing costs like promotion, advertising, etc. Certain agency fee will be paid for like keepers or finder's fee, but it won't be 50%, of course. Take an example of how Dr. Initsky's technology, or better, ready business product, biohumus, was implemented in the Emirates. The marketing there took around 10%, give or take. And the colleagues from SWC took care of that. But at the same time, the amount of money wasn't that big. And it was a solvable community, credit-worthy community, and they, I think, almost finalized at the final stage of funding of this project. And it wasn't 50-50. It was, as I said, the referral payments amounted to a very moderate amount. So what our colleagues write in the letter, that they are overly pompous intermediaries between investors and the UST group of companies, the appearance, existing, and number of which fully depend on your will and desire. Well, I already said regarding the will and desire, Dr. Initsky made a wise, smart decision to single out high-speed UST in order to reduce the costs of fundraising. These add-ons to the UST technology are not independent, since they do not determine the norms and rules of behavior interaction established by you, and only with your approval can they implement this or that financial marketing previously agreed upon with you. Don't fall into misconceptions here. The financial marketing is not agreed upon with Dr. Initsky or other norms and rules. Roughly speaking, if 50% is allocated for marketing, it is up to the crowdfunding marketing platforms how to allocate those 50%. And Dr. Initsky has no influence on it whatsoever. Let me give you an example using our platform, Micron Global platform. The fact that we're changing the marketing plan of RSW systems to a more profitable one, the total percentage still remains the same, around 30-31%, give or take 1-2%. And I didn't receive any prior agreement from Dr. Initsky to how I'm going to allocate those 30+%. It is up to the crowdfunding platform. The crowdfunding platform can create a one-level structure system and pay all 30% to the person who brought in an investor. Like it's in the insurance business. The entire insurance business works according to this way. MetLife, VN Insurance, like 200 years old, they all work through insurance brokers, and they use the same marketing plans as in our case, like Micron Global, Sky W, SWC, RSW systems. And the first payment from the client goes as a fee to the broker, and the insurance company receives very little from the first payment. So basically, for insurance company, it's a lot of risks. Hopefully, and the company is hoping that the client will be paying the insurance premium in the future years. So Dr. Initsky has no say in the how many levels a marketing program will have. So once a percentage is agreed upon before crossing the river, the metaphorical river. So once the percentage amount is agreed upon, like this 30% or 40%, it will the company decides how to distribute. In America, it will be different. But right now, please do not involve Unitsky in this process. He has no say in it. Please answer, I continue. Under what conditions do these structures interact with you? Isn't it time to put things in order in the exorbitant number of marketing levels? The depth of referral deduction should be reduced. But I already told you that both fundraising companies have an agreement with GTI. At least in the case of Micron Global, we have an agreement with GTI. Its agencies or marketing services provided to GTI that we render as a fundraising platform. And for that, we are allowed to keep an agreed upon percentage. It's the marketing costs. It's agreed upon and set in the documents, and the remaining amount goes to the implementation of the technology. And I'm sure our colleagues from SWC work according to the same principle. We believe that it is time to adjust the contracts with them in favor of increasing investment in UST technology. Excessive marketing depth, multiple levels, is actually a misuse of investor funds. You, like us, cannot wait forever. Many investors have not lived to see this day. All the independence, autonomy, and bravado of these warmed-up firms will crumble from one word and desire from you. Now my question to you, dear authors of the letter, where did you come from? How did you come to the string transportation technology? It happened thanks to the operation of those fundraising platforms. If a person, your friend, your relative didn't tell you about it, you would never invest in this technology. Moreover, I'm 100% sure that 300 plus people who signed the letter, each of them, at least 90% of them, actively participated in the marketing referral activities and earned their commission. So please do not tell tales that this is misuse of investors' funds. This is what everyone agreed to or signed to 10, 11 years ago. This model has worked, is working, and will work. But in the future, it will be used to fund the innovative operations of the engineering company, i.e., it as improvement and upgrading of the existing technologies. High speed will use a different financing model in order to reduce the cost of fundraising and optimization of costs. As for the current marketing structures, I already explained about the depth of levels and so on. I'm not going to repeat myself. So it is strange that on one side of the scale, we are constantly told that USD technology is severely underfunded, that the development of the high-speed segment is estimated at only 1%, and on the other side of the scale, we hear talk of cigar clubs, observe lavish receptions and dinners, and see countless photos on social media of cash receipts of hundreds of thousands of US dollars to USD from Vietnamese investors. But where is the problem? If a crowd investing platform, SWC, for example, has up to 50% of money paid as the fee for their services, and they have certain items in their budget allocated for receptions and marketing promotions, etc. So what prevents them to use that money to organize big events for large investors? So you're saying that hundreds of thousands of dollars are coming from the Vietnamese partners. It is thanks to such events that big players come to the company who are in a position to invest big money into the transportation technology. So what is bad about it is that the platforms take around 50% of the funds raised. Well, this is the rules of the game that were established and everyone was okay with that. But high-speed UST will abandon this principle because Dr. Nitsky don't want to wait for another 20 years to be able to implement the high-speed transportation in order to fully build the hub, so that instead of attracting $750 million, he would have to raise 1.5 billion. So we've covered everything here, and now let's go back, dear friends, to the basics. Ruslan, I'm going to ask you to disable the chat because, again, I see questions here. At the end, I will give all the comments. And now let's talk about the main points raised. First, our colleagues, the authors of the letter, have their own subjective perception of the situation and what the string transportation technology is. For some reason, the authors think they are experts in the area regarding the intellectual property and the sector forming segment of it. They think that the string transportation technology is equally applicable to urban cargo and high-speed transportation. Remember, I give you an example with the Volvo company, where I told you that Volvo, for example, develops 3 different types of vehicles: cars, long-haul trucks, and special purpose vehicles. So please tell me, can a design bureau that develops cars, personal cars, use their knowledge and expertise in the area of personal cars and create a special purpose vehicle? And let me tell you, no, they can't, because it is different technical knowledge and knowledge of systems and components that are not the same for personal cars and special purpose vehicles. Now let me ask you a question. The String Technologies Inc. as an engineering company, as an R&D, has around 60 design bureaus under its umbrella, and just one of them conducts R&D in the area of high-speed transportation. Just one design bureau. And when you say that we've helped Unitsky create an engineering school, thanks to which he will in the future create a high-speed transportation complex and will showcase the sector forming technology. Dear friends, you are mistaken if you say so, because let me ask you a question. A rhetorical question, you will answer it yourselves. Can a design bureau that deals exclusively with long haul trucks, with cargo transportation based on string technology, create high speed transportation technology if that same design bureau and its personnel were only involved in the cargo transportation based on string technology? Can that same personnel create the entire high-speed transportation system? No, of course they can't. And the same stands for the design bureaus that are involved in the R&D for urban passenger transportation. They are not in a position, without Dr. Unitsky, to develop high-speed transportation systems. So what I'm driving at here is that at the basis of it all, at the basis of all three segments, of course, lies the UST technology. But it doesn't mean at all that high-speed transportation system derives from other types of transportation. If we funded two segments of UST, it doesn't mean that it should 100% reflect on the high-speed transportation that we didn't fund. Let me try and explain it to you. I'm going to read a couple of points that will help you understand what kind of a huge complex of works needs to be created to make sure that high-speed transportation is implemented. I have just prepared a couple of bullet points here. The overcomplexity of the development of the sector generating technology, including more than dozens of system forming technologies, systems and subsystems, include R&D, tests, design, construction, prototype building, startup and commissioning, state peer review, certification of all systems and subsystems, then test operation for several years, then failure testing and safe operation. And only after all of it is done, one can say that the technology is ready for implementation, going into the market. So if we take, for example, global leaders who are creating not complexes, but just one system of a transportation complex, a rolling stock. For example, Ford cars, Boeing airplanes, Sikorsky helicopters, Siemens company, it's the maglev trains, Tesla, Kamaz, Belaz, which is a heavy-duty truck. In order just to create one part of a transportation complex, it takes dozens of thousands of engineers, researchers, testers, designers, process engineers, economists, marketologists, supply experts, engineering experts, etc. Again, thousands of designers and engineers can create an innovative piece of product, more or less competitive product, in the transportation sector, or a product that would help form this sector. So it's important to understand that what Dr. Nitsky is doing is not just creating a showroom. Elon Musk was creating a showroom when he set up a small piece, a small piece of Hyperloop to showcase it. So what happened since? They've been doing it for 10 years. They raised several $billions. So what happened of them? The company shut down. Several $billions were raised. And this was a showroom, what he was building. And Dr. Unitsky is not creating a showroom. By creating a hub in the United States, he would like to put a fat period, an exclamation mark, stating to the entire world that this is a sector forming technology that has a comprehensive set of all aspects of string technology: urban passenger, cargo transportation, and high speed transportation. And together they contribute to creating a sector. And I've just told you how much work and how much many experts are needed for that. And UST is not an exception from all those examples that I gave you. And for the development of a sector forming technology, UST, and going into the global market, and by the way, friends, we need to take into account that transportation sector is the most corrupted section in the world. In order to go into the market and create a sector forming technology, you need to spend man days on man hours, and to maintain salaries, pay rent for the offices, operational costs. It takes billions of dollars. And if you, dear colleagues, authors of the letter, think that you are high-level experts in the area, just give me an example from the transportation industry that were able to create in the same short period as Dr. Unitsky, to create a whole entire sector forming project or technology. Don't give me examples from the IT, because it's different. It's kind of easier than transportation. It's not as resource and engineering intensive sector as transportation. It doesn't take so many engineers and man hours. So, dear colleagues, authors of the letters, after submitting such claims, just give me a simple example from the history of the transportation industry where the company would be able to create anything similar to what Dr. Nitsky is creating. And the history doesn't know any such examples. So, friends, it is very important to understand one key thing here. If indeed, before starting this journey, we agreed with Dr. Nitsky that we are going to fund the entire string transportation technology using crowdfunding to bring it to the point of design, production, testing and certification and sale, then we performed only 2 out of 3 points obligations. Unfortunately, for the third segment, we did not raise enough funds. And now the entire scope of works that I've just listed, everything that is required to create a sector forming segment of transportation, high-speed transportation. Tell me, how much was created so far? In your letter, you said that Uniflash was showcased. Well, friends, what is a Uniflash? Let's deal with facts. Let's not wear pink glasses and engage in wishful thinking. Uniflash is a module, a pod, which was designed based on the blueprints of Dr. Initsky with his know-how on the achievement on the best aerodynamic indicators. And if you remember parameters, and if you remember, this Uniflash has a very specific shape. To create this module, a specific design bureau was involved dedicated to the high-speed transportation. And that module was designed not for 500 kilometers per hour. It was not logical to create a 500-kilometer pod without having a 25-kilometer track. It was showcased as a prototype with an aerodynamic shape based on the Dr. Unitsky's calculations. So it just showcased that this module theoretically was capable of achieving such speed, but for the U-pod to be able to develop such speed, it requires a 25-kilometer track. Then it also needs to be redesigned because it will use a different track system, different motor wheels, different safety and security and control systems as well, and everything that I mentioned before. So basically everything that is included in this particular sector. So, but if we take the entire scale of the project, we can compare it to a mock-up model. And it's a unique feature of Dr. Unitsky's genius is to optimize costs when implementing his technology. So Dr. Unitsky received a certain amount of money. He created this much work, which will be bigger than the same work created by another company with the same money. Give Dr. Unitsky a bigger amount of money. He will create not just a showroom, as you say. He will create something that will able to showcase a whole sector in the United States. By amount, what do I mean by the amount? Let me give an example, very simple example. You go to the internet and see how much money any company spends on just creating one car model. When I was getting ready for this meeting, I went online and I Googled how much does it cost to create a new car model. Let me show you very interesting statistics here. And you'll understand what I'm driving here. I guess a picture is worth a thousand words, right? I just wanted to show you what kind of sphere we're involved in and how our efforts help Dr. Unitsky. So the article is called like failures of car industry in the last 15 years. Mercedes-Benz, Smart Jaguar, Volkswagen. I will read it out to you. So we're talking about the Gazeta.ru, and it gives very curious numbers. You know, smart car issued by Mercedes. So it's a two-seater, smart car. It's kind of a car that can seat two, can host two people, and one seat for the driver, one seat for the passenger. That's it. It's like a motorbike, but on four wheels. It's a small, very compact sedan, but without like two extra seats. So here's an interesting fact for you. Based on the evaluations of the Bernstein research, the development of the first generation of Smart cost $3.35 billion. Losses for each car amounted to 4.5 thousand euros just to create a new kind of car using the old established technologies. And Mercedes was at the beginning of this sector just to create one car, smart car, small car. It's like a very small two-seater. It cost $3.3 billion. The second, let's call it screw up by the car making companies. Fiat Stilo. It's a urban hatchback. According to the estimations of Bernstein Research, the development of the car cost $2.1 billion, whereas losses per car were $2.7 thousand. So this article is about, let's call it failed R&D by car manufacturers, showing you that the development of a model did not pay off. When the companies sold their cars, they sold them at a loss. In other words, when the company sold the cars from a new line, they sold them at a loss. Next, Volkswagen Company. It's a huge German company that includes Audi, Bugatti, Porsche, etc., etc. So Volkswagen released a limousine class Phaeton. So where was it? The development of this limousine took $2 billion, and the company Volkswagen lost $28,000 per car. And there are other examples: Peugeot, Jaguar, Renault, and many other cars. Bugatti company, for example, they spent $1.7 billion to develop this car model. So all those examples show you what I'm driving at here. Before giving you this example, I told you that Dr. Unitsky knows how to use little money to carry out a huge scope of work in order to bring his product to the market and to showcase the sector-forming transportation technology. Give Dr. Unitsky $1.7 billion to showcase the technology, he will create a whole series of commercial projects, a whole series of hubs, and will be able to fully bring into the market the sector-forming technology and scale it up. So you see what I'm driving at here. This is the first point. Second point, you need to understand that in order to create a new model of a car, you need dozens of design bureaus comprising the design, the chassis, the engines, the interior, the exterior, safety and security systems, testing, etc., crash testing, and then you need to build the entire assembly line in order to produce and scale up. So going back to our topic about 1% stake or 1% funds in the high-speed transportation that you are authors of the letter are so indignant about. So if we take this 11-year period, we will see that in order to create everything that we can see right now, to have everything that we see right now and co-own, let's say it costs several $100 million of net money that the company received to create the technology, which is probably dozens of times smaller amount than the money that was spent on the smart Mercedes car. So the company received dozens of times less than those cars. And Unitsky created two ready-to-use commercial products. Let's go back to the high-speed transportation. If you just create one module, a pod, because after all, it's a pod, right? One car equals one pod because you have then roads, filling stations, service centers, etc. So car manufacturers spent billions of dollars, and the company throughout its history received way less money, dozens of times less money, and yet it was capable of producing more than 15 different types of rolling stocks. But as for the high-speed transportation, do you think the company spent more than 1% out of that money? Of course not. So it is very important to understand this. And now let's think about, or better compare. Dr. Unitsky on numerous occasions said that creating a high-speed transportation pod or module is comparable or comparable to creating an airplane. So let's right now write in the search engine bar this kind of request or query. How much does it cost? I'm not typing in the right bar. Let me see again. How much does it cost? No, let me rephrase. How much does it cost to develop a new airplane? And let's see what it says here. Let's see here. How much did it cost to develop F-35? Oh, it's a fighter jet. No, we don't need that. Let's see in here. I remember I checked this article. I can open it on my phone, but I cannot open it on my computer. But we have an extract here. If I'm not mistaken, it was a superjet plane. At the exchange rate back then of 72 rubles per dollar, it was 6 billion $70 million, which is within the range of $6 to $7 billion necessary to develop a modern passenger airplane. You can Google it up yourselves, compare and play around with numbers and make your own estimation. What I'm driving at here is that creating a plane is not creating a sector. It's just creating a one piece in the system, because in addition to that, you have airfields, special vehicles, maintenance, um, control towers, navigation systems, and many, many other components. And just to create one plane, it takes billions of dollars. Not create, develop one plane. I'm not talking even about building or setting up the production line or assembly line. Just to design, to develop one brand new piece of machinery or one airplane, it takes billions of dollars. So Dr. Nitsky in the United States, by building high-speed transportation, will showcase the entire sector. And when you say, dear colleagues, that you don't need to show other R&Ds by Dr. Nitsky, but how can you create or showcase the sector without it? Because the rolling stocks and the tracks is not an entire sector, just part of it. And you need to show it as a comprehensive complex. And those fundamental things, unfortunately, are not clear to some of our partners. And they don't fully understand what we invested in and still are investing. And those are fundamental things that we all should be aware of. What else I wanted to point out here? So what else do we have? Just give me a second. Well, let's go back to the maglev train, magnetic cushion created by Siemens. Germany spent 50 years and $6.5 billion. And nobody was even fined for failure because this technology was shut down. This project was shut down altogether. It was shut down more than 10 years ago. But at the same time, they spent billions of dollars, made money. Well, those who were part of it, but the technology never made it to the market. So how much money did it cost? And when the authors of the letters mention the misuse of investor funds, etc., please try and understand one important thing here. What you have invested into and what you are part of. Dr. Unitsky throughout his life never broke his promise or went back on his word. If we try and recap what happened in the last 10 days since the day of the publishing of the memorandum on high-speed transportation, this is what happened. I'm just trying to give you a summary and then we'll continue. Dr. Unitsky took his intellectual property and included it into GTI with the agreement that this intellectual property has three segments: cargo, passenger, and high speed. Originally, it was planned to have 15 stages. It was a perfect scenario, perfect storm case, right? How it can be implemented. But every business plan has adjustments because of the external factors and force majeure. And we are not an exception. Since 2014, when the process started, there were a lot of unforeseen and circumstances, starting from the Baltic state region all the way to the COVID and geopolitical situation that's been ongoing for 4 years. Despite of all of that, the original course set in that 15-stage program, Dr. Unitsky followed that course in order to monetize their technology. And it was all about developing, producing, testing, and certifying going to the market. So over that time, based on the agreement, we funded we provided funds that were used to create 2 out of 3, cargo and passenger. And we funded only 1% for the high speed. But Dr. Unitsky did say that regardless of any kind of reorganizations or restructuring, investors wouldn't be left behind. So he decided to single out high-speed transportation as a separate project in a different jurisdiction in a country with a favorable investment climate. Taking into account the current geopolitical context, it was the wisest decision. Dr. Unitsky, roughly speaking, makes a decision to not use GTI to raise funds for high speed anymore because it couldn't go forward as it used to be, because it is too expensive to raise money through crowdfunding for high speed transportation. This is A. B. It's going to be a very long process if they use crowdfunding or crowd investing to implement high-speed transportation. C, he says, colleagues, friends, investors, you believed me in the beginning. Out of what we planned and expected to fund using crowd investing, we planned to fund and implement 3 segments. Yet we were able only to implement 2. And in those 2, you have 100% co-ownership. Since we failed to fully fund the high speed, I'm going to move it to the United States and fund it there. And I will add my intellectual property in the area of high speed in it, based on the aerodynamic calculations, etc. In that company, you, investors, or better, GTI, will have a 5% stake. So someone asked in the chat about it, and I'm giving you clarifications right away. GTI will have a 5% stake in that new American company. So if you, as an investor client, have 100,000 pre-IPO shares and the company has 5% stake, then 5% stake means that they will have a 5% stake in the profits generated by that company, and it will be shared with you proportionate to the number of pre-IPO shares you have. In this case, 100,000 pre-IPO shares, or according to the number that is entered into the shareholders registry. According to me, everything is clear and transparent, and nobody's rights have been violated here. Now, if we try and summarize everything that has happened recently, now going back to our investors and our colleagues who had doubts in the fact that UST group of companies and Dr. Unitsky's personally, well, they had doubts that they provide correct information about the expenditures or costs related to high speed. So based on the letter that we together read and looked into, it follows from the wording, from the words used in the letter. And some investors now are demanding to evaluate the cost, to estimate the costs spent on high-speed transportation. Colleagues, let's enable the chat here. Please do not ask your questions right now. I just need your feedback to what I'm going to ask you. So, authors of the letter, signatories of the letter, I'm asking you the question. So do I understand you correctly that you want UST group of companies to provide reports for the cost estimates for the or the reports on how much money was spent on the high-speed transportation, correct? Please answer me this question. That's what you're asking for. Someone says no. Yesterday in the chat, in the Telegram channel, that's what you were asking for, that some people are asking for an audit how much money the company spent on high-speed transportation. And that's why you do not agree with the 5% stake, right? So if we follow that logic, and there were also messages from individual investors who were asking for the company to provide reports on that. So let me express my personal opinion as an investor into the string transportation technology. Someone says, you don't understand yourself. What 5%? What do you mean? Okay, let me clarify, okay? So we as investors get 5% stake in the US company. GTI receives a 5% stake in that American company. And those 5% are evaluated at $37 million. What UST group of companies spent on high-speed transportation so far is estimated at 1% tops. And let me tell you this, dear friends, by this letter and by this kind of attitude, and not only in the form of this letter, there were other messages and letters from other investors who are now demanding that the company should report on how much was spent on the high-speed transportation. So I think a fair decision from someone says 5% in American company should be added to 100% in GTI. Correct, yes. In GTI, we are directly related to it, 100% co-owners, because we funded cargo and passenger transportation. And we have, in addition to that, 5% in the American company. Now, tell me, friends, I, as an investor in string transportation technology and CEO of RSW Systems, I'm very, very defensive about Dr. Zunitsky's reputation. And I'm also very defensive about his brainchild, to the development of which we all contributed. We all added our micron effort monetary effort. And I'm very, very defensive about it. And when some of our investors undermine with such letters, with such circus in the chats and other platforms, write comments like this without looking into the essence of this technology, sector forming technology. And when you colleagues do things like that, you are undermining the reputation of Dr. Unitsky himself by accusing him of things that he has no relation to, didn't commit, or intend to commit. This is A. B, you're undermining the reputation of the entire brand of string transportation. You're undermining the work of the crowd investing platforms too, without fully understanding how they operate. So, in my opinion, this is what I think. If right now you demand that Dr. Unitsky revise his decision, that he should revise the allocation of a fair stake for our stake in the high-speed transportation, I think it would be correct to do the following. First, the group of companies, UST, for 10 years has been conducting legal activities in the Republic of Belarus, represented by the engineering company. A few years ago, this organization became an R&D institute. Next, the company regularly undergoes stringent audits. In that country, people can be put in prison for a mere sum of $100 if that dollars was underreported or overreported. When someone wrote in the chat, like the audit was, what was the word they used? Mr. Dmitry, our investor, he put it this way that the audit was not fair or independent. And I told him, do you think an audit was performed by an interested party? This is not how it works in Belarus. If an audit is conducted in that country, it is a full-fledged audit according to the letter of the law. So what I'm saying here is that since 2015, the String Technologies Inc. in Belarus has been undergoing very strict auditing process. And in those audit reports, there are very clear-cut cost items there. What was spent on what things. And in those reports, there are specific expenditures aimed at high-speed transportation. And when Dr. Unitsky said that they spent 1%, I think he even overestimated it. But instead, he said, instead of 1%, I'm giving you a 5% stake. And if the company now decides to give you an audit report on the expenditures on high-speed transportation within the funds raised through GTI, I'm sure the total amount will be even less than 1% of the total amount raised. So I think those people, when the company does submit such report, the authors of the letter, the signatories of the letter, and individual investors who sent similar messages, who want right now to threaten the group of companies, let them receive the actual stake proportionate to their investments. They want it to be fair and transparent, right? The company will show how much it spent on the creation of high-speed transportation. And when we see the exact figure, if it's 1%, then those colleagues, authors of the letter, to be fair and square, should receive 1% stake and not a 5% stake. If the total percentage is even smaller than 1%, then they should receive proportionately less. if they're not okay with Unitsky's being generous and giving 5 times more than they spent on the high-speed transportation, then they should be happy with what they actually deserve. Because with such letters, with such messages in the chat, you are undermining the reputation of the company. And directly, personally, Dr. Unitsky, Alexei says, "Oh, now you are blackmailing us." What do you mean blackmailing? Don't you think that such letters are blackmailing because they're threatening to go to the president of the country or going to the authorities? Don't you think it is blackmailing, fair and pure form of blackmailing? And when I'm talking about fairness, you start complaining. If you want to see the real numbers, you can. You can extrapolate and take all the financial audits and see how much money was raised and spent. But if the company decides to present a separate expenditures report based on the independent financial audit and shows how much money was actually spent on high-speed transportation, I think it would be fair to give the investors what they deserved or what they asked for. They asked for a report, they will get the report with the consequences. So the company's GTI raised this much, the engineering company spent on the development of high-speed transportation this much, you get this much. You are not okay with 5%, you will get what you deserve according to the financial statement. And in my opinion, it's gonna be fair and it's not blackmailing. Alexei says, this is your own initiative or were you authorized to do that? This is just my personal opinion that I'm sticking to. That's what I would have done if I were Dr. Unitsky. And I think it would be completely fair. So I think this would be the most logical and fair solution for such investors, authors of the letter. If you think that Dr. Unitsky cheated you somewhere, defrauded you, then there is financial reporting performed according to the international standards based on the laws of the Republic of Belarus, where the engineering company is located. There are evaluations and reports from other international auditing entities. Therefore, here the company has nothing to hide, but I think it would be a fair thing to do. And when you're saying that it can look like blackmail, well, look, if right now we are at a point where group of companies UST has dozens of contracts and they are working on several projects on urban passenger and cargo transportation. So when you're writing defamation on the internet, it all undermines all those efforts. Just go online and see what people wrote about Dr. Unitsky. And if you think that by writing such things, you increase the chance of getting the payout, well, metaphorically, you're literally cutting the branch you are sitting on or spitting in the well from which you are going to drink. So if you think that shitting on the Dr. Unitsky and his company and the brand is okay, and while dealing with you fairly would be blackmailing, no, I'm sorry. There should be a balance in this world. There should be some justice in this world. This is my deepest opinion. This is my firmest belief. As for the market evaluation and everything else, I gave it. There will be a comment from Dr. Unitsky, I'm sure. And he, as the author of the string transportation technology, as the owner of the intellectual property, his intellectual property, he will surely give an answer to this question. What I can tell you now is if we use the evaluation of the high-speed transportation intellectual property and add it to the GTI, our stake will decrease at least 8 times. because high-speed transportation was evaluated later, and those numbers might really frighten you. The evaluation of the intellectual property of high-speed transportation, we're talking about trillions of dollars. But I don't want to dive into it because it will literally scare you off. But Dr. Nitsky will tell you more about it because it is his intellectual property. He is the author of the technology, and it is his right to tell you about it. But on my side, here's what I wanted to tell you. So you mentioned blackmailing. No, colleagues. Let's not pick words out of the context here. And let's see, I've been here with you 2.5 hours already. And let's take a look at the timeline. And the timeline is as follows. A memorandum was released, published. After that memorandum, some investors decided that they were highly qualified experts in the area and they thought they had the right to make an assessment of a person who dedicated his entire life to an innovation and to the most breakthrough technology over the last 200 years. And those people expressed their quote unquote quote qualified opinion. So I conducted a meeting, I commented on it, and a lot of colleagues and partners understood that. Dmitry, just give me some time. We will have time for the questions and answers. You are asking me where are answers to our questions. This is what I'm doing. I'm answering your questions, and I also answered your questions during the last meeting. And once I'm done with my comments, I will also start answering your questions. We have another meeting on Thursday as well. So let me finish my thought here for you to understand what kind of logic I'm using here. So we had a first meeting which was held on the 6th of March, if I'm not mistaken. I give you a clear explanation of what happened, and I told you why the GTI company made this decision. Then a collective letter was sent for me to read and probably sign it as well. But what I saw in that letter, in my opinion, it was defamation, slander of Dr. Nitsky and his team and his entire brand. So I made a decision to have one more meeting and answer additional questions pertaining to this situation. Next, I decided to publicly discuss this letter because we're talking about 300 people here, even more. But out of what I see in the chat, where we have around 2,000 people, just a handful, like 10 people, are writing negative comments. And most of the people support the decision of Dr. Initsky. But this small portion of clients or investors into the technology who are stirring the muddy water, it's like a fly in the ointment. You can indeed cut off the branch that we're sitting on, tree branch. So if you keep undermining our efforts, Dr. Unitsky's efforts, then you can nip in the bud all the work that has been done when we are almost in the market. So with such short-sighted attitude, don't take it personally, but it's like, you are being coach experts. Coach by meaning kitchen or sofa action. Someone says you can make mistakes, but you shouldn't lie. What do you mean? Who is lying? I just gave you the timeline of what happened before 2025. So let me continue my thought. So when I read that letter, I, as an investor who is concerned with the reputation of the brand and who has a lot of pre-IPO shares, who would like to see those shares capitalized, monetized, and I know that such comments and letters can undermine the entire effort. And I'm not being a kitchen expert here. As you said, no-name experts made an evaluation and other disrespectful comments. When I see such conclusions and opinions, I think there should be consequences, fair consequences. If you think that all of it was a deception, then okay, the company can provide a report on the expenditures on high-speed transportation, and then you will receive a fair stake based on the actual money raised. So if you wanted to report, you'll get a report, and then you'll get an accurate, actual stake in the company, which will be less, way less than Dr. Yunitsky actually gave. It will be even less than 1%. And Yunitsky is giving a 5% stake, which is 5 times more than the allegedly raised amount, spent amount, and which is dozens of times more, potentially dozens of times higher than it can be. And remember, like at least 30% of the money that the American company will get will go through UST in the form of design orders, etc. Adenia is asking when capitalization and dividends are planned. Look, Adenia, I've had a lot of meetings dedicated to capitalization and dividends. Just go to the GTI website and read the memorandum of dividends, and you can see when and how and what formula, because I'm not a parrot to repeat the same things all over again like a broken record. Dear colleagues, we are not in a kindergarten here. I showed you the sheer scale of what is happening. Other similar companies working in this similar sector in the adjacent transportation sectors like SkyTrain, Hyperloop by Elon Musk and Richard Branson and others. All of those companies shut down. Billions of dollars were invested. All of it closed down. We have several hundred million dollars that were raised through crowd investing and then reached the company, and 2 commercial products were created with real orders. And last time I told you about the signing of the contract in Ukraine, and I participated directly in it. And if the war didn't happen, didn't break out, it would already be running. It was like a 5-kilometer track without any problems with the terrain. And the company already has a lot of similar products for us to see the capitalization, the monetization in the near future. Someone is asking what's going to happen with our pre-IPO shares if Americans receive shares right away. And does it mean that an American company will immediately go to the exchange? Just look the meetings that we had. What Americans will get and have has nothing to do with us. The American company will issue shares for the high-speed transportation and the hub only. This is A. We are pre-IPO shareholders in GTI who owns UST that created 2 commercial products, urban passenger and cargo transportation. And those products are in the process of commercialization and going into the market. And we're going to share in the profits of that company. And the high-speed hub in the United States, we have a 5% stake in it. But from the time of the creation of the start of the work in the United States, and the works will start from design works, which means dozens of millions of dollars going to the UST, and we co-own UST. Can you see the relation? It will directly affect our ability to receive the first payouts. I told you during the previous meetings that while the high-speed transportation hub will be under construction in the US, we will already be receiving potential profits from that process. Roughly speaking, Americans invest, and from there, American company will place orders within UST within its own design bureau created by Dr. Unitsky, and we will share in those profits. Can't you understand that Dr. Unitsky is acting according to the current situation, circumstances, trying to capitalize his technology ASAP? He doesn't want to spend another 20 years on investment crowdfunding to fund his high-speed transportation system. Latinin says, you said our design bureaus cannot develop high-speed transportation. Our design bureaus number 60 bureaus. And there is a dedicated design bureau that is involved in high-speed transportation. But when a hub is built in the United States, it will mean there will be increase in the personnel of engineers and personnel of the design bureaus that will be directly involved in the high-speed transportation development. Can't you see the relation here? More money, more personnel, more develop, more R&D in the high-speed transportation as well. And Dr. Unitsky will supervise this. Someone says, what if Americans force the company to create a design bureau in the United States? Why do you think they are in a position to force anyone? He comes to the country, says, I have my own engineering school, and my engineering school, I have a group of companies who can do that, but nobody says it should be an engineering school should be created in a specific location. In order to create an engineering school in a new country with a different language and everything, it will take 10 more years. And we don't have that much time. And for Dr. Unitsky to follow in his tracks again. Well, probably over time, an integration might happen. Probably part of the personnel will be relocated to the United States. Probably that's what's going to happen. But it doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen. So that's what I'm saying that, well, colleagues, I see Anatoly Dmitriuk says, don't judge everyone by yourself, sober up, or wake up, Raisa. Could you please, Ruslan, ban Dmitry from the chat? He's too rude. Dmitry, you don't know Raisa. Why would you talk to her in such a manner? I will not allow such disrespect to our clients. What do you mean by wake up or sober up? So, to sum it all up regarding the letter, I gave you a detailed clarification for each point in the letter. 90% of what was written in the letter isn't only not true, but reflects just subjective opinion of people who are engaging in guesswork. And I'm sure that none of those people has any involvement in or have any experience in engineering, or let alone a whole sector forming technology. So those people probably engaged in some wishful thinking and passed their subjective opinions as expert conclusions. So I'm making this conclusion based on what I read in the letter. So colleagues, if you have doubts about something, I'm sure you will get a report on expenditures from the company, and then you will get your fair share of the stake in the company based on how much you contributed. Because, in my opinion, such letters and messages undermine the efforts of existing and future thousands of investors and people involved in the process. Someone is asking, will investors from CIS be able to invest in high-speed transportation? I already answered it. Yes, everyone will be able to invest in this company. How it will happen, we'll see whether it's going to be through our platform on different marketing terms and conditions. Probably we will enter into an agency agreement with the American company. We'll see. But the mechanism will be announced in the future, I'm sure. But it will be available. Let me read the comments. So what's going to happen with our shares? Okay, I've already, in 10 years of this company, I've never seen any deception. Someone says, nothing what was told in the past came true. So what do you mean? The company 2 years ago said that they are preparing the financial legal framework for paying the remuneration dividends. That's what they're doing. They are preparing the financial legal framework. Why the company declared it? Because there was a increased interest from customers, and the company started receiving their first orders. They have reached the break-even point. If there is even more orders, then there will be potential profits generated. And in order for the company to be able to share their profits with investors, with us, a financial legal framework needs to be created. And Dr. Initsky started thinking about it in 2023. And in 2024, he confirmed that the process was ongoing. So what do you mean nothing came true? Just watch all the materials over the last 2-3 years and you'll see it yourselves. The company in the United States will go to the market with the shares. What should the rest of people do? When we will be able to sell our shares, which are now pre-IPO shares? When those pre-IPO shares become shares, and it will happen when the company is able to show positive dynamics in profit generating, then the GTI company will probably decide to launch its IPO. In order to do initial public offering, the company will have to go through the restructuring to make sure that they do it in the right jurisdiction and so on and so forth. But before that happens, we don't need that to happen to start receiving our dividends, our remuneration. You don't need to be a public company to pay dividends. So we'll be able to receive remuneration from the point when the company will start generating enough profits as stated in the declaration of memorandum of dividends published in 2024. Next. Please confirm that the document about the evaluation of market. Okay, I covered this already. Oksana says, instead of having a dialogue with partners, you are threatening that you will take the stake away from us. Oksana, look, I've been having this dialogue already throughout 3 meetings, and we'll have a 4th meeting on Thursday. And Dr. Unitsky is not a puppet that we can pull the strings and he will go online and start and try to explain himself to us. So who do you think Dr. Unitsky is? It's a person who is at the head of a 1,000 people strong engineering school. It's a person who is now working in the United States. It's a person who is present in the United Arab Emirates. A person who is engaged in multiple negotiations related to the technology, commerce, and implementation. So what do you mean instead of having a dialogue with partners? When memorandum was published, he immediately published a Q&A video and you weren't okay with that video. And I, as a CEO of the platform, took the initiative and created 4 meetings, held 4 meetings about it. And during my second meeting, I announced that I'm sure Unitsky will also provide his own comments, more detailed comments. And you're saying that we're threatening you with taking away your stake. I'm not taking away anything. I'm saying about fair allocation. So if you want to have the expenditures report from the company, then you should be getting a fair stake based on the actual amount of money invested. That would be square or fair. So such letters have consequences, reputational consequences involving us, investors as well. You threaten invest Unitsky, saying that you will go to the authorities, to the president, and you're okay with that. But you're not okay with receiving the actual stake based on the investments. So it's kind of we're playing. It's a two-way street. You cannot go only in one way here. And our obligation to fully fund the high-speed transportation was not performed, was not fulfilled. And I don't think we even raised 1% for high-speed transportation. I think even less was spent on high-speed transportation. And yet Unitsky is ready to give a 5% stake. But I'm sure that in absolute figures, it will be even more than 10%, because it is 35 million out of which is a 5% out of $750 million. Someone says, Maxim, you are a very talented financial expert. Thank you for that. So there are some questions that are poorly formulated. I do not fully understand them. Please reformulate and send it to me in private. Someone says, Maxim, you all explained correctly, and it is clear to me that people who wrote the letter and signed the letter just simply don't understand anything about creating and implementing such a project. Well, I'm of the same opinion. Latinin Roman says that the engineering school is on the territory of unfriendly country, and it's an infrastructural project. So what do you mean by unfriendly country? Well, basically, it's a kind of the current geopolitical situation is that America is now moving towards CIS region. So even if they are unfriendly, used to be unfriendly, they are becoming very friendly right now. And even before Donald Trump and all the other events, Dr. Initsky received a O1 visa, um, irrespective of the fact that he was a resident of Belarus. And O1 type visa is given to outstanding people, talented people, remarkable people in the area of culture, science, etc. And Dr. Initsky easily received that visa, and there is no such thing as backdoor access to the American visa. And yet Unitsky easily received that visa. Maxim, how were the authors of the letter able to collect 300 signatures in just 5 days? I think there are a lot of probably forgeries there or fake authors. Well, not necessarily faked authors or signatures. There was one person probably who initiated everything. Then he wrote a comment, and there are other people who read his comment, watched the meeting, probably read the news, started panicking, and decided to join in. without actually looking into the essence of the problem. That's what happened. I don't think there are any fake names or emails there. It's just a panic and lack of understanding, I guess. So Anatoly, regarding the discount, I don't really understand what you meant. Someone says, learn to control your thoughts. Maxim, you are strong visionary in string technologies. Someone is asking, can investors from CES invest in high speed? Yes, they can. Someone says 5% stake in high speed is evaluated at 37 million divided by a million investors. It's mean $37.5 per investor. So we invested $33 in 10 years in high speed transportation. Am I right? Not exactly. There is a GTI company, and GTI raised a certain amount of money, and that money 99% of that money was spent on implementing two commercial products called urban passenger and cargo transportation. 1% out of the total amount of money raised was spent, maximum 1% was spent by the company on creating the first prototype, which, if taken in the context of the entire hub, it was a prototype. It's kind of even a mock-up model. It can be even called a mock-up model, not even a prototype, given the scale. So it doesn't mean that we invested 1% or 5%. It means that Dr. Nitsky is giving us as a down payment a 5% stake for our trust in him, that we believed him 5 or 10 years ago. And dear colleagues, I'm really indignated by the ignorance shown in the chat. When a person joined in December the technology and then sees your comments and says, can I have my money back from this company? And when he sees such hype and such complaints, what happens is that we are slowing down the fundraising by scaring off potential investors. So that's why I think everything should be fair. You raise the issue, you have a lack of understanding, face the consequences. The company will provide the expenditures report, calculate everything accurately, and then those people will give what is due. Someone says, is it going to be a contract or a joint venture in the United States? It's going to be a separate US company set up by Dr. Nitsky as the author of the high-speed transportation. This is A. This company is partially owned by Global Transport Investment, to a small fraction. But then this American company also will make contracts with UST for design, production, etc. And we co-own UST through GTI. So creating a company in the United States allows to implement a huge commercial project. For UST, creating a hub in the United States means a huge commercial project. So it's not a joint venture in the United States. It's a standalone company, but we have a 5% co-ownership stake in it through GTI. The letter was written by one person and you cannot collect so many signatures in 5 days, someone says. Well, they could have shared it somewhere in the chat with a Google form, and people added their names and emails and then they copy pasted. I think it's very realistic. Someone says, let's have patience. We've been waiting for so many years. Let's wish health and long years to Dr. Nitsky. My partners and I, we have 13 unread messages. Ruslan, could you please disable the chat, because we are running out of time. So my partners and I, from the very beginning, understood the essence of the project. We believed and now fully trust Dr. Nitsky. We know where we're going and when we're going to be there. Dear Maxim, thank you very much for the clear explanation what's happening. With very wise and reliable CEO, nothing is scary. We sleep. We are not losing any sleep. We wish everything would be fine. Okay, good. Maxim, just answer the question and not wiggle out of them. Maxim, what do you mean? I think I'm more than answering all the questions. And if I am being emotional about it, I think you can understand why. I'm a human being after all, and I am very responsible about my business because I've been doing it for 11 years of my life, and I will be doing it for the foreseeable future. So to saying that I'm brushing off or wiggling out is not correct. Where do you say that someone was threatening to lodge complaints? The letter doesn't say anything about it. Oh, look, Oksana, it's not in the letter, but the way people writing in the chat, people were threatening to file complaints. But then, based on that letter, you can see in that letter, in between the lines, that there is a mistrust there, and mistrust addressed to Dr. Initsky. Mikhail says that based on the last memorandum, there will be no possibility to co-own the parent company. No, based on the memorandum, funding of the high-speed transportation is through crowd investing is stopped, but not funding of the string technology in general. I answered it last time. Maxim, design works in high-speed transportation will go through GTI. It means that the profits will also go sideways or not. Look, Roman, you asked the question. I told you that once the UST hub for high-speed transportation is created, it will cover passenger, cargo, and high-speed transportation. And right away, an agreement will be made with UST group of companies. And who is the beneficiary of UST? GTI, and we co-own GTI. So profits from the design work will go to our pockets as well. So here's a live example. You spend hours saying the same thing, repeating the same thing, and then someone says Maxim is beating around the bush and is engaged in empty talk. So you see, some people are hearing but not listening. I already said so much about it, and still people asking questions. Here's a provocative question. A Zoom user asked it, but I will ask your question, answer your question only if you give your name and surname. If your username is iPhone or Zoom user, I'm not going to engage into discussion with anonymous users. So once you put a name to your comment, I will. Adenia says, did Unitsky try to receive this type of visa 15 years ago to America? I don't know about 15 years ago, but last year he received it quite easily. Mai Yashkina wrote, Maxim, you explained everything correctly. Personally, to me, it is clear that people who wrote the letter or simply agreed to the contents of the letter, they know nothing about the creation of such a large-scale project. For your information, the contents of the letter was actively discussed and corrected, adjusted. Okay, I'm happy for you. Latinian Roman says, I sold my house in 2016 to invest in this project. Well, this was your decision in 2016. So, my question to you, you invested through what platform? If you invested through Swig, then Swig was based on financial education. And I remember they always said that you should never invest your last money into any investment project. In 2016, you should have been investing 1 to 5% of your investment capital. Someone sold their apartment and invested in Bitcoin when it cost $100,000. Now Bitcoin costs $80,000. Someone sold their real estate and invested. And then do you think that person is a smart investor? You shouldn't be doing such things by default. The legal service of RSW systems did not help me with the receipt of the extracts from the registry and the investment agreement with the original signature by Dr. Nitsky and an actual stamp from GTI. Why do you think that electronic agreements are not legal documents? We live in the 21st century where documents are signed using special applications. You authorized your signature, use your digital signature, and it's an absolutely legal instrument. And it makes it a legal document. So how do you imagine the company has like 500,000 investors? Can you realize physically to sign by hand and put a stamp on every single agreement? Anatoly, come on, it's the 21st century outside. Or somebody told you that an electronic document is not a legal document. Go to a lawyer and consult with them. Or do you think that the company's lawyers are not qualified enough that would put the company on the spot and make the company enter into unlawful agreements? Well, I don't know. I will take the last comment and then we can call it a day. It's in English, so give me some time, please. I look forward to the United States company. I'm grateful for the 5% stake in the company. I didn't even know Unitsky was going to come to the United States. Pretty cool. So it was written by Brenda Torres. I'll tell you more. Dr. Nitsky visited twice the United States with quite lengthy visits, preparing the financial legal framework for the American company, and held negotiations with potential investors, negotiations for the piece of land, adequate piece of land. Twice he visited the United States last year, and I'm sure he will have more visits to the United States this year. Okay, friends, I would comment even more, but I've ran out of juices and we've ran out of time by a big margin. It's 9:30 my time already. We started almost at 7:30, so it's been what, like 3 hours at least. Yes, we worked in a very active process with a short break. So Ruslan, could you please enable the chat? Please don't ask your questions anymore. You can just share your feedback on this meeting. And then on Thursday, friends, we're going to finalize this topic. We'll cross all the T's, and everything as far as the high-speed transportation is concerned. We'll summarize everything, and then finally we'll move on to our marketing activities that has been long in waiting and has been waiting to be discussed. So on Thursday, friends, same time, 6 p.m. local time, my time, GMT plus 2, I'm inviting you to our high-speed transportation meeting, and then we'll wait for the video published by Dr. Initsky because in April, because until the end of March, he is on a business trip. So I will read the comments that you've just written. Thank you, Maxim. We love you. You're doing great work. That's what Brenda has written. Thank you for that. So, Maxim, let's go nice and easy. We will build that house eventually, and everything's gonna be fine. Cool. Thank you. Everything is okay. Maxim, you didn't understand me correctly. It wasn't you who was brushing us off or wiggling out. I meant that you're talking about Unitsky. I'm sorry, Roman. I don't fully understand what you mean. If I misunderstood you, I'm sorry. And if you misunderstood me, I'm sorry too. So basically, let's agree on that. Someone says everything is clear. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. What else we have? Anatoly says, unfortunately, we didn't receive answers to most of our questions. Well, Anatoly, I don't know what other questions you want me to answer. I think I've answered more than enough to. And I've given a lot of answers already in the chat as well, to our partners. As for the high-speed transportation, I've raised the key fundamental points. Look, Anatoly, the private nature questions should be asked either privately or in the support, because this meeting is not about Mr. Anatoly. This meeting is about the questions that are of concern to all of our partners. Someone says, thank you very much, Maxim. Next. So look, here's what I want you to do. If the user does not provide their name, I will not read their comment. I see Zoom user wrote something. I'm not going to read that comment because I need to understand who I'm talking to and not to an anonymous user. Roman says, I sold my house, but of course I didn't invest 100% of the money, but I've invested quite a lot of money. Well, okay, Roman, then you did it right. You shouldn't, of course, invest all of your money in a venture project. So thank you for your feedback. Lydia says, thank you very much for a very adequate webinar. Artur says, you did not answer the questions in the chat that I asked. I'm sorry, I must have missed them. If something is not fully uncovered for the high-speed transportation, let's try and answer your questions on Thursday. Maxim, you misunderstood my question about the design bureau. I meant the entire high-speed transportation design and not just one. Well, everything that relates to Dr. Nitsky technology can be designed only by his school. And this school now has one design bureau for high-speed transportation, which will expand and scale up. And of course, it will be done using the domestic in-house resources. And if a bureau needs to be opened up in a overseas country, it will still be the personnel of the engineering school of Dr. Initsky. If we're talking about the American hub, then it will be 100% of personnel involved from the UST, which we co-own through GTI. Okay, dear colleagues, thank you very much for your patience, for your time. And those of you who will be watching the recording of this video, I would like to thank you for your patience as well and for the desire to make the head and tail of this very important question. I will be waiting for you on Thursday on our final meeting dedicated to high-speed transportation, where we're going to summarize everything we know so far. Have a nice evening and see you the day after tomorrow at 6 p.m. Kiev time. I'll be looking forward to seeing you there, and have a nice evening and a productive day tomorrow. Bye bye.